Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Ssds here, and today I'm going to be doing kind of a meta deep dive on all three Hunter specs. I get asked a lot of questions when I stream, everywhere. What's the best spec? What comps are best for each spec? All that. What specs are viable? So I'm gonna start off the video, but first I'm gonna go individually each spec, talk about their best comps, where they fit into the meta, and then at the end I'll be kind of talking about which spec is quote unquote the best, where they how you do with each spec. So we're gonna start off with BM. So BM, I would consider BM an S tier DPS spec at the moment. It's very strong, has a lot of good consistent damage. Um, has a range kick, which is also very nice. It's not easily seeable since you don't ever really have to push in. The other thing it really lacks is a good way to trap on its own, since it doesn't have anything like harpoon or scatter to trap out of. But if you coordinate with your teammates, it kind of alleviates that issue. So a lot of comps that are good right now for BM are Jungle Cleave, obviously, or bread and butter for Hunter for the past 6 years at this point. Jungle Cleave is very strong. Hunter DK is also a pretty decent comp. At higher ratings, it starts to taper off a little bit, just since you'll fight comps like Fury Warriors that can just kill your Death Knight and you can't really help them. But definitely at lower ratings, that Fury Warrior can be really good because you can just kill people. Not Fury Warrior. I mean, DK Hunter will be really good because you can just Zerg people, run at them, and just kill them instantly with a bomb limb and all your cooldowns. So Hunter DK is a decent comp. Ret Hunter is decent with BM. You kind of act like a Fury. You act like a warrior for your Ret. So you guys just do your you just do Hodge traps and stuff like that. You just kind of run out one target, kill it, and just hope you win. It's pretty much the only really comps for BM is. Beast Cleave's decent too. It's probably the worst out of the three non jungle comps, but it definitely works. So BM, in my opinion, is kind of the spec you play when you're not playing with like a rogue or a rogue or a feral. Like if you don't have those on your team, it's definitely the go-to spec just because it does the most easy damage. What I mean by easy damage is that its damage is very unpreventable. You can root the pets and all that, but eventually the damage is gonna happen. Unlike with Marksman, where you can line the aim shots, you can disarm them, and it really stops them. And Survival, where you can there's like certain talents like that Death Knights can take to help really reduce damage. A lot of BM damage is just it's gonna happen, and there's nothing the enemy team can really do to prevent it. Nothing extra they can do, so it's very hard. So yeah, BM Hunter is definitely really strong right now. In 3v3 and 2v2. It's pretty decent with a healer. You can't really play with anything other than like a Ardruid or a Holy Priest though, or like just any healer in general. It's definitely not made to be played with double DPS. You can maybe get away with a Feral Druid, but you guys would have to be pretty good at the comp to get away because you guys would have to be able to live a long time for BM's damage to really matter because BM doesn't have much burst. Like you can get kill shot procs that hit really hard, like get a crit kill shot at burst, but there's no like reliable way to burst his BM. So that's like its main weakness as well, is that it doesn't have the most crowd control and it doesn't have a real burst option that's like reliable. There's no double tap, there's no bomb procs, there's no. It's just kind of always doing consistent damage. So it's kind of BM. So the comps for BM are jungle, Hunter DK, Hunter Enhance and Hunter Ret are both all pretty decent comps here. So next, we're gonna talk about Marksman. So Marksman, I would consider A tier at the moment. It's pretty good. I don't know if I could go and consider it S tier. Just to I think that it's the most easily counterable Hunter spec. And when I mean by counterable, not like oh it gets counter comp, but its damage is the most stoppable. It's the most abusable. Like you can easily handle Marksman Hunter. It's the easiest spec to handle. But the thing I've found with Marksman, especially compared to the other two spec, is it kites really well. If you're using your mobility really well, if you're abusing your disengages, your burst, your shots, if you're using everything really well, it's pretty good. I kind of find it ironic. I was talking about this with some friends, but I remember at the beginning of the expansion, Warriors and um, like Ret Warrior was like a really difficult comp for Marksman, and now I think it might arguably be the best comp. Like out of the best spec, Marksman might be like the best spec into Ret Warrior. Just because it's ranged, it runs away all the time, it has good crowd control, and it just does a lot of damage now. So it really helps. So I consider Marksman A tier. Another reason why I don't think it's S tier is that it gets super countered by Outlaw Rogue. Um, you may not count Q into a lot of good Outlaw Rogues or any Outlaw Rogue at low armor, but definitely at the higher echelons, Outlaw Rogues are gonna be a pain. With Gouge, Kidney, Disarm, Blinds when they want to, it's super hard to get your damage off against an Outlaw Rogue and have it matter. So um, for sure, Marksman falls off a lot higher at the M100s when you start queuing the Outlaw Rogues, but it's definitely good to a lot of the other comps. It's good in the Ret Warrior. It feels pretty good in the Ret Warrior. Turbo Cleave is decent into. It's definitely good into Mage comps. Um, Rogue Mage is probably another really decently hard comp just because if they play right, they just run whenever you're doing damage, and then they counter. They another way they peel you is by doing a go. Like you're not doing much damage when they're doing a go because you're not gonna be able to aim shot or anything like that. You're either in stuns or you need to be running away, and then once you can do your damage, they'll just run away. So then you can't really do much. So that's another comp. So that's like Outlaw Rogue and Rogue Mage are kind of the reasons why I don't think Marksman is S tier, but it's definitely pretty strong right now. Its comps are pretty much the basic. It is Thug Cleave and then Jungle Cleave, not in that order. I think they're Jungle and Outlaw Thug are both tied, but those are the two best comps for Marksman. Outlaw Rogue and Feral Druids just really cater to what Marksman needs. Gives you reliable lockdown on a kill target. Helps you with CC, with blind, bash, maim, all these extra CC. So they help you lock down the main kill target and also assist you in getting CC. Um, so it's those two are the best. Nice. 100 DK kind of works, but you definitely struggle into cleaves. It's 100 DK. With Marksman, it's definitely a lot harder. It's probably the worst spec, but you definitely will beat Mage comps really easily as Marksman if you're playing 100 DK. But I still recommend the BM for 100 DK overall. It's the best spec into all matchups. So Marksman's A tier. Its best comps are Thug Cleave, Outlaw Thug Cleave. Some Thug Cleave's good too, but Outlaw is obviously better, especially once you start getting used to it. And then Jungle Cleave are the best two comps. So let's talk about Survival next. Survival, I believe, is another S tier spec. It might be on the cusp of S tier. It could definitely be, it could be argued that it's only A tier. I think it's S tier. It's very strong. Um, just it was the main issue with survival is that things like holy priest mage rogue mage was kind of hard because they can just control you and just like kind of prevent what survival is really good at, which is doing a lot of consistent damage. It's like BM. It does a lot of consistent damage, but it has some burst opportunity. But the consistent damage of survival is very counterable by people just being able to kite you and get away. So that was like the main issue with survival. But I would still consider it S tier. Um, Survival's like BM. It has a lot more comps. Obviously, Thug Cleave is pretty good. Outlaw Thug is really, really good. Jungle Cleave is really, really good. 100 DK with Survival is pretty decent. You'll struggle into Mage Lock. Will be a little bit harder, but honestly, with the Resolves nerfs, I haven't really queued the Mage Lock yet. But with the Resolves nerfs, Mage Lock probably isn't an issue anymore, especially without the 4-set Infernal Stun happening anymore, since you can reliably feign death at Survival Tactics every single double Chaos Bolt, so that's probably not an issue anymore. So Survival, definitely an S tier class, pretty good. Same comps as BM, Ret Hunter, PhDK, Beast Cleave, and then also your S tier comps, Outlaw, Thug, and Jungle are all pretty good. The one thing survival has is that it's very self-sufficient spec. Like Marksman's somewhat self-sufficient, but still needs help. Survival is like the truly self-sufficient spec. It doesn't really need other people because you have Harpoon to help get traps reliably. Um, Marksman like can get traps reliably too with Scatter Trap, but that's kind of a little not great to do since you're losing essentially 4 seconds of potential CC or 2 extra seconds of CC. Um, it also doesn't have like mandatory talents like Marksman does. Like Marksman has to take Scatter Shot. You can play more of the talents like Chimeral Sync, Trank Darts. You can play these other talents on like Marksman as well. And Survival might be arguably better than Marksman into Cleaves just due to the 4-set, the bomb 4-set, because you could do some insane cleave damage. I actually had some fun games with Big Max playing Double Survival in 3s. I'll be uploading that soon. Where we were just absolutely just lambasting melee cleaves. They were just getting decimated with how much damage we could do. So for sure, survival is pretty good in cleaves. It probably is better than marksman, but they both are the best in the cleaves. BM is definitely the weakest in all the cleaves. Doesn't kind of do the damage you kind of need. It does decent damage, but it's definitely easily handled by the melee cleaves. So survival is another S tier DPS. So BM is S tier, survival is S tier, and marksman's A tier. So now, where do all these three specs kind of fit into the meta? So I would consider survival the best the into the cleaves, like Ret Warrior, Turbo Cleave, stuff like that. I think it's the absolute best because it does the cleave damage, but it also does the burst. So you kind of look at it as like BM Hunter is all about just kind of consistent damage. Cleaves a little bit if you swap around, but it's all about just doing consistent damage. And Marksman can do some consistent damage, but it's more about just doing burst damage with aim shots. And your buttons like Death Chakrams and Resonating Air and Double Tap. So it's more about the burst. As to where Survival is kind of the best of both worlds, you know? It has the high sustained cleave damage, and it has the potential to do in some pretty insane bursts. So it's definitely, in my opinion, the best into cleaves. BM is the best into, I would say, like um, caster melee, you know, like, or just not ranged in melee. So like, I think it's the best in the jungle cleave mirror. Yeah, you don't have many damage like survival, but you just do the most consistent damage. You're constantly you're disrupting the flow of the game because you're constantly killing them. At no point is your damage really stopping. Even when you're running away, you're still just destroying them. So things into like rogue mage, jungle cleave, you know, things like that, rogue lock, things like that. I think BM is the best because it constantly is doing damage, so it disrupts the flow of how these comps typically want to play. They typically want to try to get CC, do big goes, um, and then try to like live in between the goes. And BM really disrupts that by just constantly always doing damage. So even during their goes, they're still maybe having to use defensive cooldowns, or maybe they're not able to go as ham as much as they like to. And then I think Marksman is the best into um, double casters such as Mage Lock, um, Ellie Lock if you ever queue into it, things like that. You know, I think it's the best into those types of comps where you can just sit back, you just pew pew some big hits, you know, maybe do some bursts, but you just sit back, you cast these big aim shots. It's super hard to punish you. You have extra ways to stop their damage with scatter shot. You have a range kick. So Marksman's definitely really strong in the double caster. So that's kind of how I look at it, but I don't want you guys to think just because I'm saying like, oh, survival's the best in the cleaves, BM is the best in the mage, to ranged melee, and then marksman's best into double caster. I'm not saying that you should only be queuing these comps if you know that's queuing, because survival's good into double cast too. It's like decent. It's the worst spec arguably into double caster, but it still works. You can still win. It's still good into the ranged melee. Like it's good in the jungle mirror. It's good into rogue lock. It's good into rogue mage if you play well. So the like it still works. It's still very good. Like I would still um like I wouldn't have like a losing win rate into RMP if I was playing survival, you know. So like it wouldn't be like, oh, I'm just losing every game. Um and it's the same thing as like BM. I'm not gonna auto lose to cleaves because I'm BM, you know. I'm not gonna auto lose into ranged melee as marksman. You still have good chances of winning all specs. That's why I consider two of them S tier, one of them A tier. You know, because they're all very good. So at the end of the day, honestly, play what you prefer. You know, play what you enjoy the most because if you're playing what you're having the most fun with, you're more likely to improve at a faster rate because you're actually enjoying what you're doing. If you're not enjoying what you're doing and you're trying to improve, it's gonna take longer because you're not having as much fun, so you're not as motivated to want to play and want to learn. You know. So at the end of the day, I recommend you just do play what you enjoy. But I kind of hope this video kind of gives you a guideline of like what comps, what specs want. So like Jungle Cleave wants any spec, Thug Cleave wants Marksman Survival, Peach DK wants either like Hunter wants either BM or Survival, Red Hunter wants either BM or Survival, and then Beast Cleave wants BM. You know, it's kind of like a guideline, but you can play Marksman Beast Cleave and you could probably do pretty decent. You could play, you know, You could play some Marksman PhDK, and you do pretty decent. You could play some you could probably play BM Thugly with an Outlaw Rogue and still do pretty decent. Like you can still make these comps work. Just it's kind of like I want this more to be treated like a guideline and less of like, oh, you can only play this spec with this comp and you can only play it like this. You know, at the end of the day, play what you enjoy. Spam all the games and just get used to how you think the comp should play with your spec. But if you guys ever any questions about specs like that, I'm more than happy to help. But I hope this video does a good job of kind of explaining the hunter specs in the meta, how well they do. I didn't really talk about. I kind of did talk about counters a little bit. The hardest comps for all three hunter specs, it's called kind of the same. Like Rogue Mage is like a 50-50 matchup. It's like a soft counter. Like if you're not playing well, you're gonna get bullied by the comp. And then it's like Ret Warrior, and like Turbo, are pretty like they're soft counters as well. You can beat them, but they're pretty difficult. DHDK, if the Demon Hunter knows what he's doing, it's pretty difficult. If the Demon Hunter is really good, I've been queuing to MVQ, and he's definitely a hard Demon Hunter to kill, but you'll probably have at lower ratings easier times against Demon Hunter comps. Like Demon Hunter Boomy and DHDK have both been pretty difficult because just the Demon Hunters I fight at high rating are pretty good at living, but at lower ratings it's probably easier to beat these comps. But they're also scary because they do a lot of damage. Like DHDK is a very like that every A bomb limb is almost guaranteed death. So if you don't rotate properly, so those are kind of hard comps. But you know, if you guys have any questions at all, let me know down in the comments, or you can find me in my stream, on my Twitter, anywhere. I'll be more than happy to help. I hope this video was helpful, insightful, and all that. If you like it, please leave us a like and please consider subscribing. I appreciate it, helps me out a ton. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.